Uh, there is a divisiveness that's happening in our country today. And it's happening for a reason that most people don't think about. If you see it on Facebook or you see it in the news, you just think, well, it's always been like this. It's just getting worse. But there's actually something. There's a psychology that's happening underneath it all that perhaps some of you are aware of. Is anybody in sales or persuasion of any kind? Thumbs up. Oh, and let's do a little exercise, guys. At the bottom in your system tray, there's a button for Zoom. It's called Reactions. And in reactions, there's a thumbs up. Would you practice that with me right now? Give me that yellow thumbs up. There you go. A lot of you finding it. Excellent. This is a chance for you to let me know that you're enjoying the content, that we're on the right path. We can calibrate the GPS every few minutes if you hear something you like. You'll notice there is no thumbs down button in the Zoom interface. And that means you will not be disagreeing with me at all. I'm just kidding. I actually enjoyed disagreement. In the business, we call it a pushback, and it means that you have issues, and that means other people may have the same issues, but it gives us a chance to talk about it now rather than you hanging up and saying, I don't know what he meant by that. So I'm happy to clarify in an ongoing manner as we work through the program. But this idea of this psychology that's happening that creates divisiveness. Stay with me now. I'm going to work you through something quickly. So, professional persuaders, I'm not saying salespeople, but some salespeople work like this. Politicians, special interest groups. A lot of these people know that fear is a fantastic motivator. Thumbs up if you understand what I'm saying. That fear can get your attention. Think about a guy that's selling a basement waterproofing, because this happened to me one time. And I had a little crack in the wall, and worry about the walls caving in, so I got to get somebody out, right? So this guy comes out, and he goes right away. He doesn't even really try to sell me the features and benefits of his service. He goes to work right away on the bins and the storage things that were on the floor of the basement. And he said, I see you keep a lot of things down here. I'll bet some of it's important to you, isn't it? I knew right away where he was going, and I said, well, yeah, of course. There's some stuff I got from my mom and dad that's, sentimental value. It's irreplaceable. And that's exactly what he wanted to hear, because what do you think he said next? Well, you want to make sure nothing bad happens to that stuff, right? And what he's doing is working me through a sales process that's going to have me thinking that I need to spend a lot of money, maybe even more than I would normally spend, in order to get my basement waterproofed. This is the sales pitch that this guy was favoring. And I saw the technique right away. I don't like it when people try to use fear to get me to motivate me. And I started thinking more about this, and I thought, well, if fear is effective, it's probably also fairly easy to motivate people through fear. I mean, you're seeing this right now on the eve of the election. Both parties trying to scare you into voting for them. Because if you vote for the other person, bad things are going to happen. And you notice it's never minor bad things. It's always catastrophe. It'll be the end of the world as we know it. We hear phrases like, this is the most important election of our time. We hear it every 4 years. So you understand the psychology that's happening here. And then it occurred to me, well, if fear is really effective but really easy, is there another kind of persuasion that could work even better? Might be more challenging, but it would work even better than fear, because fear has its problems. Fear causes paranoia. Fear causes mistrust. Fear causes communication problems, right? And I started thinking about this, and the answer to the question is, yes, you can persuade people based on not what we have as a difference, but what we have in common. Thumbs up if this appeals to you. By looking at what we have in common, you can persuade people to do things that you want them to do. Now, what does that mean? And it could mean vote for me, but it could also mean join Rotary. It could mean give money to Rotary now that you've already joined. And that's the essence of persuasion. And that's what's really attractive to me. Attractive enough to create a presentation about it, and soon a blog post, and maybe even more presentations, depending on what kind of feedback I get from you guys. So I started to go to work on this idea of what I call the overlap. What happens when you have A and B and you overlap them? Here's a very simple version of that. You see what I've done here with this overlapping circles. I have two things, and if they were apart like this, you would say, well, they're completely separate and apart. They have nothing in common. But it turns out they do have something in common. Not much, but enough maybe to have a conversation about, or enough maybe to persuade these two groups to stay together or to work together. Now and this is called, by the way, the Venn diagram. It's named after a 19th century mathematician by the name of John Venn. You probably didn't know that. V-E-N-N. He's a Brit. More about John in a minute. So this is a very easy Venn diagram. And if you wanted to think about a Venn in your life, I'll give you some examples. And grab a pen, because I want you to think about this for a few minutes after the program, maybe even later today. I'm going to give you a few examples of a Venn diagram. And then we'll talk about real life rotary stuff that might be interesting to you or your work, right? Easy examples of a Venn diagram would be ice cream and television, right? Because you like to eat ice cream while you watch television. In fact, if you like to snack, like I do sometimes when I'm watching TV, I think about both at the same time. I don't even think about them as separate and apart. That's a Venn for me, man, right? How about this? Spaghetti. Where's my buddy Joe Caruso? Spaghetti, meatballs. You see the Venn diagram there? I would never think of having spaghetti without meatballs, or vice versa. How about this for some of you? Shower, soap. You'd never shower without soap, right? And so it's a Venn diagram, and they fit together very nicely. Now, what I want to talk about is how I use this in my world and how this really resonated with me, and you may feel the same way. Some of you know, if you read my bio, that I'm a consultant, a communication consultant. In fact, I just got a call this week. I basically teach presentation skills, but I think everything's a presentation, right? So I got a call this week for a municipality here in Michigan that's having a little bit of trouble getting along. 7 people on the council, 7 spheres of influence, and maybe not enough overlap, maybe not enough Venn diagram, right? One guy in particular, I hear, is the bad news bear, right? And so they want somebody like me, I haven't gotten the gig yet, but they want somebody like me to come in and see if we can get these people to fly in the same airspace. It's not going to be an easy job. But one of the ways I prepare for this is I start, as a consultant, I start connecting the dots. Why is he like this? Who are his advocates on the council? Who doesn't he get along with? Where is he coming from? What are his ideologies? Is he the only Democrat on a council full of Republicans? I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of these questions. But when you get behind the curtain, there's a front of the curtain and there's a back of the curtain. When you get behind the curtain, you can learn a little bit more about the psychology and how people roll. And this is intriguing to me. So, I'll let you know what happens with the gig, but that's the idea. So back to our buddy John Venn, who discovered this thing. He actually built the background is on probability and statistics, which is interesting to me. But he actually capitalized on George Boole. I think his name is pronounced Boole, and he was a mathematician the generation before. Boole had an interesting life and an even more interesting death. So the way it happened was, and this happened with Plato, and so it was Plato, Socrates, and then Aristotle. Plato never wrote anything down, but his protege, Socrates, did. So we know a lot more about Socrates than we do about Plato. And the same kind of thing happened with George Boole and then John Venn, is that John Venn made George Boole famous, right? So Boole's life was interesting. His death was even more interesting. Check this out. Boole, one day, walked 3 miles in the rain to give a lecture. He was soaking wet. He gave the lecture in the wet clothes. and he got sick. So he's at home and his wife's looking after him, and one of the, this was before urban legends, but one of the what do you call it, medical procedures of the day, the common thinking of the day was that if you wrap the person in wet clothing, that they'll get better. Now keep in mind, that's how he got sick. So she wraps him in wet clothes to help him get better, and he dies of pneumonia. So she effectively killed her husband. So maybe that's why old George didn't get to finish his work on what would have been known as the Booley diagram. But the Venn diagram came about from John Venn. Now let's talk about some interesting examples of the Venn diagram in the Rotary world. Think about this easy one. So you got passion here, and you've got, say, talent here, right? So we were talking earlier with Lizzie Martin, who's your public image chair. Lizzie has a passion for public image, and it turns out she's pretty good at it, maybe really good at it, right? And what do you do for work, Lizzie? Take yourself off mute if you would.
I work in advertising.
So she works in advertising. She found a way to get paid for it, right? And when you do the paid, talent, passion, and talent, and you merge them all together, you've got a pretty good thing going on. Sally was maybe the same example. She loves to travel. She has a talent for understanding deals and how they got packaged, right? And she figured out how to get paid for it with her talent agency. It's the perfect Venn diagram, right? Same thing with me. I came up through the music business. My brothers and I performed in a touring rock band. We opened for acts like Rick Springfield, Corey Hart, Joan Jett. Thumbs up if you recognize any of these names. And I learned that I was not only pretty good in front of audiences, but I really liked it. It was kind of like a drug for me, right? And then I figured out how to get paid for it. You see how this could work out? So that's another easy example of a Venn. Let's talk about another example of the Venn. Rotary is an ecosystem unto itself. If you've been with the organization for any amount of time, you understand this. And if you are in Rotary, we're always trying to connect with business. Businesses are good places to get members. Businesses are good places to get sponsorship money, right? And then the third part of the Venn down here is the city, the municipality. My gosh, you could fill your speaker calendar, probably half of your speaker calendar, with a state of address from the mayor, state of address from the school superintendent. You could have the head of the hospital, not exactly business, but kind of community, come and speak to the club. Just by having the industry experts come and speak, right? It's amazing to me that we don't do more of that in Rotary. So you've got Rotary, which is an ecosystem. You've got the municipality, which is an ecosystem. And then you've got the local businesses. And if you can find a way to create a Venn with those three entities, every one of them gets better. So that's pretty cool. And that's how the Venn works.